In this tutorial, we'll talk about how to apply non-participation codes to untaken RISE tests and which codes are most appropriate. Participation codes indicate why a test was left untaken, and there are many to choose from. The most common participation code is 101 did not test. This is the default code, meaning that the test was available, but not completed. It applies to almost every situation. The other codes apply to more specific situations, which are less common. The participation codes have been around every year, but due to COVID, their definitions have expanded to include some COVID-specific situations. For example, the 101 absent or did not test code typically applies to any test that remains untaken at the end of the window. Another reason why you might apply a 101 code this year is that the child is learning remotely and did not show up for their in-person testing session. Or if the student is learning remotely and you've been unable to contact them to invite them to an in-person testing session. If the student is learning remotely and is not going to come in for testing, simply apply a 101 code. That is not a situation where you would reach out to the parent and ask them to sign an opt-out form. You can just leave the test untaken. Another situation you may run into in your testing sessions is a student attends the session but refuses to participate. This is usually due to a behavioral issue. And again, you don't have to have a parent sign an opt-out form if the child has thrown a tantrum or refused to participate. You can just apply the 106 student refused to test participation code. This may also apply to a situation where a student has the behavioral issue at home and refuses to come to the school to take the test. Another participation code that will apply in several circumstances is the 107 Unanticipated Health Circumstance Code. This code is typically applied in situations where the student is missing their instruction and therefore their assessment due to health reasons. It could be physical health or mental health. An example that is specific to COVID is if a student is quarantined through their testing window, then you would apply a 107 code and say they couldn't attend because of a health circumstance. And again, students who are out for surgery, out for mental health reasons, even out for bereavement, do not have to submit a parental exclusion form to indicate that their test won't be taken. If you know they're out of school for a health reason, mental or physical, you can apply a 107 code to that untaken test. Parents can also put in writing that they wish their children to be exempt from state assessments. That's called a parental exclusion or opt-out. There is a form available on the district website for parents to use. Most front offices also have copies available. Parents don't need to give a reason why they're opting their children out. They just have to indicate to the school that that is their wish. And so anytime a parent has done that, please enter the 204 parental exclusion code to the student's test. And as a bonus, it prevents the test from being started accidentally. And please remember that state statute prevents schools and school staff from encouraging or suggesting to parents that they opt out of testing. Just like you wouldn't suggest to parents that they opt their children out of other parts of school, you wouldn't suggest to parents that they opt their children out of testing. The full list of participation codes for RISE is available in the TIDE user guide. You can access the TIDE user guide by going to utahrise.org, then selecting Resources, User Guides, TIDE User Guide. You'll find the list on page 33 of the user guide. If you have any questions about situations where these participation codes may apply, please reach out to me at brooke.anderson@jordandistrict.org or at 801-567-8393. Please be aware that some of these participation codes are almost never applied in any school year, so be sure to read the description of what the code means. Once you start reaching the end of the testing window, or if you know you have tests that are going to remain untaken, you'll want to enter participation codes in the RISE system. You can do that in Tide. So log into Tide, and if you need to know which tests are left untaken, use the Monitoring Test Progress options to get a list of all the untaken tests. You can find a tutorial on that in the RISE playlist. Once you know which test needs a participation code and are ready to apply it, go to View Edit Participation Codes and click on View Edit Participation Code Assignments. Search for the student by their ID or their name. Once you've found the correct student, click on the Edit button next to their name. You'll see a screen pop up that lists their summative tests with a drop-down menu that allows you to select a participation code. You do not need to select participation codes for their interim tests, only for the summatives. But for each summative the student is eligible to take and did not take, you should enter a code. For example, if this student had been opted out by their parents, I would apply the Parental Exclusion Participation Code to both of the tests. If the student had been opted out of only one test, I would apply that code to only the test that was untaken. Once I've applied the correct code to the correct test, I would click Save, search for the next student, and apply the code to that student, and so on. Please let me know if you have any questions about this process. At the end of your testing window, after you've entered the codes that need to be entered, please contact me and have me double check, and I'll check out all of the different tests and all of the codes that have been applied. And that will be your final checkout for RISE testing for the school year. You can reach me at brooke.anderson@jordandistrict.org or 801-567-8393 if you have any questions about this.